There are four quotes that provide an incredible context to what the family is. George Santayana said this: "The family is one of nature's masterpieces." Will Durant said, "The family is the nucleus of civilization." Alex Haley said, "In every conceivable manner, the family is the link to our past and bridge to our future." And George Bernard Shaw said, "Perhaps the greatest social service that can be rendered by anybody in this country and to mankind is to bring up a family." The family has changed. 15 to 20 years ago, the statement was, "Families are changing." Well, ladies and gentlemen, that statement is both a past reality and a future norm. What those changes mean have generated scores of conferences and books and research and talk shows and podcasts and newspaper articles and magazines even, and on and on and on. Over the next few weeks on the Wise Idea podcast, I want to invite you into our conversation about family life. We are going to address it from multiple angles and in multiple ways. We'll dig into some pretty difficult conversations and we'll laugh at some others. We're going to talk through parenting and marriage and blended family, singleness, adoption, infertility, and even what families should do about end-of-life care and even death. As we continue to lay out this series and invite our guests, I want to invite you as an audience member to submit questions and engage in our dialogue with us during this particular series of episodes. If you have questions that you would specifically like for us to address or deal with or even wrestle with, feel free to send us an email to info, I-N-F-O, at thewiseideapodcast.com. Again, that's info, I-N-F-O, at thewiseideapodcast.com. You can also direct message us, DM us, or inbox us on Instagram or Facebook. Now, let's jump in to our conversation about family life.
Welcome to the Wise Idea Weekly Podcast with Christopher J. Harris, focusing on life, leadership, family, marriage, and the church. We are providing tools for our inspiration and wisdom for life. Our goal is to inspire everyday people to live wise lives. If you're new to us, we release a brand new podcast weekly on Thursdays. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode. Here's our host, Christopher J. Harris.
Hello, my friends. Welcome again to another episode of the Wise Idea Weekly Podcast with Christopher J. Harris. I am your host, Christopher J. Harris, and I'm so excited to have you tune in for another week of the Wise Idea. We are on mission. We are on focus. We are laser focused on our goal to inspire everyday people to live wise lives. I'm extremely honored that you all take the time every single week to tune in. And literally, we are all over the world. 22 nations are listening, not watching, maybe watching one day, but listening to the Wise Idea podcast. And I'm so humbled by that. I'm so humbled by that. I am personally passionate about life and leadership, family and marriage, and ministry. That is the church. And so that's the focus of this podcast. And we've been in this series talking about one of those in particular, and that's family life, y'all. It has been absolutely amazing. Over the past couple of weeks, we have dealt with single parenting. We've dealt what it means to take care of senior family members as they get older, and then how to have a good quality of life when you get older. We've talked about death and dying. We've talked about what it means to be foster parents and to deal with infertility and childlessness. We've talked about the stages of parenting, the whole gamut. It's been absolutely amazing. And today, we jump right into another aspect of family life, talking about the blended family. The blended family. It is a reality in our world today. It is a reality in our culture today that more and more families are blended. What are we talking about when we say blended families? That is where a husband and a wife get married, but either they were married previously or they're bringing in children into this marriage from a previous relationship. And so I've got some great friends that are going to be on with me tonight or today. I keep saying tonight, be on with me today. And anytime, or not, I shouldn't say anytime, but most times when I have questions about the blended family, I have questions about people who raise questions to me about the blended family, I've got them on speed dial. And so I want to invite you guys to welcome to the Wise Idea podcast, the Morgans, Brainard and Nan Morgan. I'm going to let them sort of introduce themselves about their family and all of that, but they have a heart for blended families. They themselves are a blended family, and I'll let them introduce themselves in that way. So, Brainard, Nan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Pastor Christopher. We're so delighted and honored that you'd have us on your podcast.
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. And I'm just honored to have you guys on and for you guys to get a chance to talk about something that you're personally passionate about. So let's give folks some context of your blended family. So I don't know who wants to do that, but feel free to jump right in.
Okay, so we are, like you said, blended family. That I have two older children. They're adult children, and they are 40 and 37. And Brainard has three boys, and they are currently 30, 27, and 24. But when we first met each other, his children were 8, 11, and 14. So we've been together for a little while, and we also added 2 grandchildren to the mix as well since then.
So you're blended grandparents now.
Yes, we are.
I remember having a conversation with you one time, Nan, about that, and you're a true grandmother. You got literally your kids can drop the grandkids off at your house. And they don't have to bring anything. You got everything they need right there.
It's just so convenient for everybody. And yeah, that way everyone's happy.
That's awesome. So let's jump right into the conversation. First of all, let's talk about the reality of blended families. Is it easy?
No, it's not. And I guess one of the reasons why or how we traverse this journey, how we got to this journey was because we went through the journey ourselves. And there were a lot of things, there were a lot of expectations that we didn't understand, to say we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. But I think there are a lot of, the traditional marriages are the same way as well. I think when the couple stand at the altar there and they make the vows, I don't know that they fully know what they're doing, but in the blended family, it's even more so. And I guess we'll get into that more into the conversation, but no, it's not easy.
Well, let's get into it right now. What is it that people really just don't know? I mean, and I want to say with all transparency, I don't know what it's like to be in a blended family. I've never had that dynamic personally in my life. So I'm sort of on the outside of this looking in. There's obviously, as a pastor, as someone who counsels couples on a regular basis and families, and one who has a passion for families, quite often I've seen lots of dynamics and can speak into some of that, but very authentically have no personal history with dealing with blended families. So what do you tell, what does this conversation look like about, blended families that people walk into and they have no idea what they're getting into?
Well, one of the challenges are, with a traditional family, let's start there. With a traditional family, the couple, they get married and then they typically spend maybe a year or so together, and then they begin their family. They have a child, and they both have the child, and they're raising the child together, and then they have another child. And so they get the ability to grow together into a family, into a unit. But with a blended family, you're bringing, there's a lot of dynamics that you're bringing into the relationship. There's so many different combinations that a step family can be designed to be. Your kids, my kids, our kids, so many dynamics. And then on top of that, you bring in the past relationships. So you bring in ex-husbands and ex-husbands and ex-mother and sister-in-laws. And there are so many different combinations. And when you get married to each other, but you get married to those combinations as well. They don't just go away, because a lot of the times you have children together, So that's one of the dynamics that a step family has that a traditional family does not have.
And so let's talk about the emotions that come with that, because I think, if we look at the narrative that's created in the media, there's the baby mama and the baby daddy drama. Do you think that is par for the course? Did you guys have that kind of drama going on, or was that something that you guys were able to avoid?
No, that happened to us as well. Because a lot of things change. When you're dating, there's a different dynamic also to when you actually get married. So I believe that when you're dating, everything is good. Your friends, the people around you are friends. But once you get married, it seems like everything just changes. We did have, we had some struggles, some challenges with exes and things like that. But it is par for the course. It is par for the course. But there's ways and there are strategies and things that you can do to get through that. And I believe that's one of the reasons we embarked on this journey, because we want to share what we've learned and the experiences that we've had, and to help other couples get through this, because it can look very daunting sometimes, but it is not impossible, by no means.
So when you think about that, and we're going to absolutely come right back to these strategies, because I think that's going to be very, very helpful. And I know that you guys have some very, very good wisdom that you'll be able to share with couples. If you had to make a list, 4 things, 5 things, up to 10 things, whatever, that you feel like all step families should consider and be mindful of as common challenges in blended families, what would you say would be on that list?
So one of the things I think is unrealistic expectations. So we go into our marriage and we think that right away that we're going to have this great relationship with this child of, the stepchild or whatever. And because it's like that when you're dating. But once you're married and you now have to start giving instruction to that child, that whole idea of blood is thicker than water starts really taking effect. And by that, I mean, children can start feeling like, well, you're not my mom and you can't tell me what to do, or you're not my dad and I don't have to listen to you. And that is why the expectations can be unrealistic at, sometimes when you then become married, and you see that, everybody sees that, well, no, I am the parent, and the parent does have a certain kind of authority, and the parent needs to have that ability to do that. But all that can be achieved. It's just that there's ways to get to that point. It just doesn't start off that way. One of the important things to understand especially with children, is that you have to develop the relationship first before you can start giving out what the rules are, or trying to enforce the rules. Not that it can't be done, but it should be done by the child's biological parent rather than through the step parent. And just allow that relationship to be develop and have time to grow, so that they can get to that point of, getting the respect from the child to give them the rules. Did that make sense?
It does, absolutely. What do you say to the couple or the family who either the children or the exes won't give you space to build the relationship?
Oh yeah.
Well, when you say give you space, a lot of that we tend to think that it's the other camp that's not allowing us to do what we need to do in this camp. So a lot of the times and it is that way, it's this camp and that camp. But something that we have to realize is that we can only control what we can do in our house, in our camp. You can love your child, you can do whatever you need to do in this camp. But when they go over there and they get other information and all that, there's nothing you can do about that. That's a battle that people try to fight, and they always, and more than not, end up losing that battle because there is nothing you can do over there. But what you can do is control what's in your home and how you you run your house. Let's just say that. And you know what? Children are smart. Right now, they might, when they're young, they might not understand what's going on. But eventually they will see what truth is. Truth will always come out. I have this thing I always say is that you can't beat love, and you just love that child and love that child no matter what's happening. The world can be falling around us, but you input love in there. Eventually, love will win out. And I know it sounds kind of cliche, but you just love your child and you love your family in your house, and whatever happens over there, it's not going to matter after a while. You'll get through it.
Wow. So I heard, so that list started, Nan started by talking about unrealistic expectations and developing healthy relationships before you start trying to implement rules. What other things would you guys include in that list if you were putting together sort of a checklist of things for these parents and adults to consider? So in our culture, we have this, and we even called it that tonight. We called it the blended family, and the curriculum that we use is from Ron Deal, how to the Smart Step Family, and he speaks of how to cook a step family. Okay, and now there are different ways to cook a step family. The blender, like we've been speaking about, they assume that all the ingredients whip together into one smooth mixture. This assumes that all the ingredients will relate to and just blend together, right? That's the way of cooking a step family. There's a food processor, okay? The food processor, the step families chop up one another's history and in attempts to instantly combine all of the ingredients in a rapid speed. When love doesn't occur right away, persons are left feeling torn to pieces and no one remains whole. That's like the processor. These are ways that we put our families together. There's a microwave, and you can see how we try to put our families together and fit them in there. There's a pressure cooker. This style of the ingredients, it's rituals and values, and this family is under great duress, and there's so high expectations until the lid just blows off. Those are different ways. We found that the best way
to cook per se a step family is the crock pot. If you consider a crock pot, right? You get, let me see. When's the last time you had a meal like that, a crock pot meal? Do you cook, Pastor Christopher?
I don't do a lot of cooking, but I just had a crock pot meal on Sunday.
Okay. So in a typical crock pot meal, let's say you want to add some carrots and some potatoes and some celery and some beef, and you put it in there, right? And then you put them in there and you put them in on low heat, right? And you let that thing cook all day. So it's like that with a family. And we can't just throw things into a blender and expect to have this meal because there are different ingredients in there. So one of your children might be a carrot, and one of your children might be a potato, right? And so those things take longer to cook, right? And so with this is family, the big thing about this is just time. It's allowing each member or ingredient to cook on low heat and let them simmer until at the end of that day, you have this great and wonderful meal. And so that's how that's the concept of crock pot. So we'll continue to call it a blended family, but we know that the best way to cook a step family is a crock pot because, and and people listening to this, they're going to know, hey man, I got a carrot in my house right now and it's still hard. But you just give it time, you give it love or slow heat. And let me tell you, that carrot is going to be your best friend one day.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because I'm thinking about the different kinds of foods that people put in their crock pot. And some personalities in your family are the people that just spice everything up. Yeah. Some of them just spice it up, and that's good. So I've never thought about that like that. So let me ask this without making an assumption. What is the appropriate terminology? Is the appropriate terminology step family or blended family?
Well, I mean, culture has called it a blended family, so we'll keep it with that. But let's call it the crockpot family. But
I got it.
Yeah. I mean,
he relates it to these different ways of cooking food because, I mean, we all have to eat, and there are all these different ways that we're used to preparing food. So it's something that we can relate to quite easily, and everybody gets the idea that he's trying to get us to understand and relate to.
Yeah, I love that though, because I think, as I think about this, that framework, that concept, even in what you would consider to be a biologically bonded family, where it's the husband, the wife, there's no kids yet, they birth their own kids, et cetera, et cetera. There could be a temptation to move in and you're trying to create the whole thing in a week. You're trying to make everything work immediately, and you have to have patience with the crock pot. And what's amazing is, I mean, you can smell something cooking, but it ain't ready yet.
mm-hmm.
You got to wait. If I could, and I don't do this often on my broadcast, on the podcast, where I kind of get a little preachy with some of the terminology, but this fits where you have to wait until the fullness of time has come. For that thing and sometimes the lower the heat and the slower it cooks, the better the food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and we definitely had those ingredients in our family. There were some relationships that were easier to develop. Probably came more with the adult children because they were adult and we were adult. And they were outside the home too, as opposed to the three boys that lived with us. But we all eventually, now that we've been together as a step family for 15 plus years,
Yes,
we are at that point now where the carrot has finally decided to cook. And everybody's expectations have been realized because some have been lowered and some have, just been accepted. So
let me ask this, if you guys don't mind sharing this, and I'll ask this of each one of you. You can answer this however you're led. As in your particular role in the family, what was the hardest thing you faced? Not as a couple per se, but that you as an individual. So, Brainard, what was the hardest thing that you faced with regards to the blended family? Nan, what was the hardest thing you faced with regards to the blended family?
First? Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
So, in this particular, in our particular family, I was the biological parent, and Nan was the step parent. And a lot of time that role is reversed. Most of the time that role is reversed. And so one of the difficult things that I had to come to terms with was that allowing they're my blood and my boys per se, right? One of the things that I had to and I think it came pretty quickly, but I had to allow the marriage to come first, because you typically you have your children and you have them there, and you have to come to the realization that the marriage has to come first, no matter how you feel about, oh, those are my children. If you two aren't together and you two aren't on the same page, then this thing quickly falls apart. And so, like when it comes to discipline, or it comes to the interaction with the children when they don't get along, I had to take a step back and take a deep breath and go back and put our marriage first by us talking behind closed doors and getting a game plan instead of blowing up there on the spot when things arise. We had to learn to take it back to, how are we going to deal with this? Not just how am I going to deal with this, because those are my kids. We had to step back and say, they're not my kids anymore, they're our kids. And as a biological parent, it's very difficult for them to do that. And so that's one thing that I went through, that I had to learn to put the marriage first.
Nan, did you see him going through that transformation?
yes, I think so. A lot of, so I saw him do that when he would there would be some correction going on, and he would hold his tongue, and I could see that he was holding his tongue. And so, but then we, like he said, we went and talked about it between ourselves, and so grateful for that, because it allowed the kids to see that we were a united front, and I felt respected that way. But speaking of, to answer your question on my half, one of the things that I dealt with that was really hard for me to deal with was feeling like I was in second place. So by that, I mean that I allowed the lies from the enemy to have dominion in my thinking, that he loves his children more than he loves me, and he does things more for his children than he does for us. And I started believing that that he didn't value us more than his children first. And I had to straighten out that mentality of second place thinking, so that I could treat everyone well in the relationship, because I found myself starting to feel jealous or not appreciated, and it wouldn't take very much for me to buy into that lie. So I went to the Lord a lot, and I asked the Lord to help me understand my place in this marriage and in this family. That we were equal people, equal partners, not just a second place. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. Let me ask this real fast, and I know Brainard's wants to jump in here. So two things really fast, Nan. You said something I thought was very intriguing. First thing is you said you had to straighten that out really fast, and then you said you had to go to the Lord. So one of the questions I was going to ask you is, how did you straighten that out? How did you get to the place where you got that ironed out, and that was no longer a repetitive part of your self-talk, right, in your psyche? I think secondly, because I always like to be sensitive, I unapologetically make our listeners aware that I'm a person of faith. But I also understand and recognize, based on the feedback that I've gotten from many in our audience, that they have not yet embraced the life of faith. So what do you say? So let's answer this second question first, and then we'll come back to the first question secondly. What do you say to somebody that's listening to this? They're dealing with the realities of blended family, and they've not yet come to terms with where they are in their faith journey.
You talk about that's Nan. That's for Nan, right?
Yeah.
So the way I handled all of that, feeling like I was in second place, is, I realized the way that I was handling things, just arguing and trying to convince him of something, just wasn't working. It just wasn't getting me what I wanted to have. And so because I have a relationship with the Lord, slow though I was, I realized, yes, I should turn to God and ask him to help me understand the value that I have in my place here. And because of my past experiences, seeing how God has worked in my life, that was the obvious answer. I mean, I've seen so many miracles in my life that God has done for me that, why wouldn't he continue trying to make things better? We started our relationship based on the fact that we felt God brought us together. So if that's how we felt and that's what we believed, well, why wouldn't he help us through our struggles? And so realizing that, I just knew that was the answer.
I was going to say really fast, Brandon. I'm sorry, but right before you jump in, I think just for full disclosure, because when a person hears Nan speaking that way, I think contextually it's very important for us to say, and Nan, I'm going to have to bring you back for your own episode, right? But I think it's important. Well, I'm serious. I think it's important for people to know, and our audience listening to this know, that part of the reason why Nan has become so resolute in her faith is because of the depth of the story that she's had in her own personal life. Nan, you were, at one point homeless. You were in abusive situations in previous relationships. There was some, I think, drug involvement there at some points, and just all of those dynamics. So you come through quite a bit of valleys, and based on your life story, you are resolute that God has had his hand in and on your life and has brought you to this point. So I think for a person listening to that, you didn't just wake up one day and get to that sort of resolution. You walked through quite a journey.
Right.
All right, go ahead, Brainard.
No, I was going to just to piggyback on what she's saying. I know when I've witnessed this happening, and it's very difficult, especially in this dynamic, that you're in a family, you're getting to know the children that are not yours, they're your stepchildren, and so there's not a lot of love there yet. But you're doing everything as a wife and as a mother. You're cooking and you're cleaning and you're doing all of that and getting nothing in return. So I understand how it's easy to feel that what am I, just the maid? I'm just the person here doing this, not getting any love or on that. So I witnessed that happening as well. And so the only thing I can say is that she stuck in there and she was willing to put in the time. Like I said, slow heat, and look at what it has produced, And so a lot of times we as step families, we don't put in enough time.
Because we're an instant gratification society anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not going to, that won't cut it in this situation.
In this situation, no.
We didn't say this on the front end because we jumped right into the blended family reality. But contextually, let me also add that you guys did all of this while Brainard, you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, and on the back of building your family, you were simultaneous to that building a successful blue collar / white collar business to being one of the most successful in this region. Nan, you were in school working
my degree
on a degree and launching a social enterprise where you were then giving back to women who were caught in cycles of negative lifestyles. And so all of this was going on while you guys have been building the family. So it's not like you were just both sitting at home twiddling your fingers and the only thing you had to do was worry about this. I want to ask one more question before we make a hard right turn and sort of get into some of the strategies that Brainard, you alluded to earlier. If somebody is listening to this and they are in a blended family and they are in a season where they are just spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted, the arguments keep coming. They feel like they've tried. There's both from inside the house and outside the house, they just keep butting heads, and there's this fireworks, this World War III that's happening. What's at least the one thing that you can say to them right now that's going to maybe turn the light bulb on, or give them a breath of fresh air, or give them hope that things could or might get better?
One of the things that I believe helped us a lot was counseling. Now, when you're in a situation and you're in it together, sometimes you can't see, you're in the forest, you can't see the forest for the trees. And I know there's a stigma on counseling, especially in the urban community, that, but let me tell you, this could be one of the life changers in your family's life, whether it's you and your wife going to counseling but you need help. You need help. You can't do this thing alone. And when you're in it, it's very hard to see where you're going. And so one thing I would recommend is to find a good counselor. And, a lot of people, they'll pick up a lot of books and they read books on marriage, on family. And those books can be good, but those are so different dynamics to a blended family. A traditional family and a blended family are two different animals. And so if you keep reading books on and trying to get help in regards to a traditional family, it's not going to help you much. You need to try to find things out there on the blended family, the dynamics, how they work. And a lot of those things will help. And then counseling, and try to get a third party to get in there and say, listen, these are some of the things that you need to put into place, because these are traps. These are things that are setting you back.
Do you recommend counseling with just you as a couple, or do you think that the other parents should be involved as well?
Just a couple. When you say other parents, you mean the exes?
Yes.
Most of the times they won't come with you, but I recommend just us as a couple. We need to know how to build our family here, how to build that foundation very strong, where the things that we can control. And then if they're willing to come to the counseling, that's good. But most of the times, it's best if you, as a couple, you start and then you extend it to the other siblings or the other people within the family.
Man, that sounds like wisdom right there. And I think that's a great segue right into what are some of these strategies that you would give to families as they begin or as they live this life of being a crock pot family?
One of their strategies is to recognize what ingredients are in your crock pot, and have the expectations of how long it will take. There was an instance where there was a family who he was a stepdad, and he went into this family, and the relationship did not work very well. He had a daughter, and he tried to get close to her. But she would just keep him at arm's length. And he came in for counseling. He's like, I don't know what's going on. I do everything, I think. And he did a lot of things right. And when you dug a little deeper, you found that, well, this was his wife's second marriage. And the first stepdad didn't want to have anything to do with her. The second stepdad was very harsh with her. And so it took a while. And we asked him, how long have you been? He said 3 years. It was like, 3 years? You're just getting started. And so a lot of times we go into this thing and thinking, I'm doing everything right. This thing should work. But you're just not giving it enough time. It takes time, especially with what the other what the children are bringing to the table. They've gone through a lot as well. So you just have to work at it. Sometimes it takes a long time.
Wow. So recognize what ingredients are in your crock pot. What else?
I think maybe not talking badly about the other parent. We tend to want to take our frustrations out in conversation and maybe not aware that one of the children might be in listening, and you could say something that would be disrespectful about that other parent. And one of the things that children bring to the relationship, to the family, is a strong loyalty to that parent. Whether they're right or they're wrong, that's their parent. And, in order to feel like you want to have control or have one up, and make your family be better than their family or whatever, you could fall into that trap of putting them down or talking bad, bad mouthing that parent. Mm-hmm. And that will never get you what you want, because there's a loyalty that child has to their parent, no matter how that parent is. So that's one thing that you have to preserve, is watch what you say in terms of, how you speak in front of the other children about their parent.
Another thing I want to add to that is,
I was just going to say, it sounds like that part of what you are inferring or challenging people with in a blended family, and I know that this is the case in a just a regular biological family or traditional biological family, is that you have to have a certain level of emotional maturity to navigate that process. And so it sounds like you're issuing, a challenge for folks to have a certain level of emotional maturity in dealing with all of these dynamics.
Yeah, you definitely have to be willing to understand that you're surrendering. It's a mentality of surrendering and giving, just giving respect to the family that was there originally, at least I'm speaking from my point of view, walking into the step family, that they were there before, and you're not trying to replace them, but you're just trying to develop your family, and not at the expense of somebody else.
Wow. So it's a true statement then that I don't have to win and you lose. We both can win. Absolutely.
If you could come with that kind of mentality, everybody does win.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. And I know it's really just kind of whet the appetite of those that are listening into this. And I'm very honored and thankful for those of you that have been a part of this broadcast and this podcast today. And so let me do this. I'm going to get some references and resources, a list of resources from you guys, websites and books and curriculum that different families can engage in. But let me just give you guys space for closing comments. If there's, one other thing that you feel like, maybe we didn't cover or you have prepared to say or thought to say, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up for our conversation today.
I just wanted to touch a little bit on the children, because I have a heart for them, because we're adults, as they say, we're grown, but the children have to maneuver through this, and a lot of times we can make it difficult for them, or we can make it easy. I always thought that a blended family could be so wonderful, because look, instead of having two parents, you have four people that love you so much. And it could be that way if the adults sometimes will get themselves out of the way. And so just if you're in a blended family and you're listening to this, just think about your children and think about how much love that they're going to need. The world is difficult enough already. And if we as adults could just step out of the way and consider the children, and our lives would be a lot more meaningful, a lot easier.
That's so good. Nan?
And I'd just like to say that, we've been through so many valleys in our blended family, but today we have a great relationship amongst all of us. And there was a point where I thought, wow, did I make a mistake? And I am so glad that I never had anything more than a thought in that way, that I never acted on that thought, that because we stuck it out with each other and we kept leaning on keeping God in the center of our marriage and our family. Today we enjoy unity. We enjoy a healthy, good relationship. His children recognize things now that may be difficult for them to accept, but they see exactly what the reality was that they lived, from both whatever was said in that other household versus what was said in this household. And they've come to now just be able to put it all together and see that that there's always been the basis of our family has always been love. And I'm hoping that that's what they get from their mother too. She's in their lives, and I just hope that they have that same kind of strength of love as the basis of their relationship.
Well, you guys have been absolutely amazing. And I normally try to end every broadcast with some quick fire questions. It's a little way to have a little fun. But I think, last time I had a couple on here, it was a little awkward to try to do that. So I won't try to throw you guys under the bus on the end of this interview.
Thank you.
But this has been amazing, and I'm thankful for you guys. I'm thankful that there are folks here on the planet that have a passion for every single area that we can find ourselves in where we have questions and need help. And I know that you guys have been an incredible help and blessing to so many blended families. So please keep up what you're doing. Please stay encouraged to know that your impact is undeniable.
Thank you very much, Pastor Christopher.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this has been amazing. So if you've enjoyed something that you've heard, I am going to put the Morgan's contact information as well as some show notes in our show notes here below. You'll be able to check those out and tune in for those. I know that the Morgans will be glad to answer any basic questions that you have about being a blended family. Our announcer is going to come and share some more information with you of how to plug in and connect with us. Let me again say thank you for tuning in. If you are listening to today's episode and you have not yet heard all of the other Family Life Series episodes, I want to invite you to go back a few weeks and check those episodes out. And I promise you that you'll be encouraged, inspired, and in fact, you will get some wise ideas from every single episode. So thank you for tuning in. Our announcer is going to come and share some more details with you. I will look forward to catching up with you and tuning in with you next week. I end every single broadcast the same way. Live wisely.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of the Wise Idea Podcast with Christopher J. Harris. We hope you enjoyed our time together. If you did and would like additional resources and information, you can find the previous episodes, show notes, featured guest information, and more at www.thewiseideapodcast.com. We also invite you to join the conversation on social media. The Wise Idea Podcast is on Twitter and Facebook. Find us at The Wise Idea and at our Facebook group, The Wise Idea Podcast. On Instagram, find us at The Wise Idea Podcast. Our host is also on social media. You can find him regularly on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Pinterest, all located at CJ Harris 1. Finally, if you enjoyed what you've heard, head over to iTunes and or Google Play and leave a rating and review for other listeners to find us. Our podcast is also on Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Thanks again for joining us. We will see you the next time. Live wisely.